Welcome to Sunday's Got Us Talking, a podcast and community by Lauren Brown and Danielle Bell, because faith and ministry don't stop on Sundays.
Welcome to episode 7 of our season, New or Renew, on our season 3 of Sunday's Got Us Talking. And we're really excited to keep the conversation going for all of you listeners that are listening. And we're really wanting to help those new in ministry in some way, or some that just need a little bit of a renewal this year. So we're really excited to have an expert with us today. Danielle likes to call him our group guru. So Danielle, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, he is the real deal. I'm super excited that Ken took the time to be with us today. Ken is the kind of person that I go sit in his workshops and learn. As I wish I would have listened to Ken, like my first couple years of ministry, I had a Ken, but even like in my 28th, 29th year, when I sat in his workshop, I was tearing up the notes. So wherever you are, he is great. Ken attends my church, which I love. And my daughter loves Ken because Ken knows church kids and he's brought her donuts early. So he's a rock star in our family. But also, Ken, I think you travel more days than you're home. I lost count, 12 something books on kenbraddy.com. So what I also love about you, Ken, is you don't see groups just from the adult perspective. You see groups across the whole church and how small, kind of like Jesus modeled it, makes this be, can grow together. So tell us a little bit more about yourself personally and just your official title and role at Lifeway.
Yeah, well, ladies, thanks for having me on. This is a fun thing for me because I've got my own podcast, and normally I'm in the host role. So this is fun to be in the guest role. And so thanks for having me in. Yeah, Ken Braddy, and I've been with Lifeway now for 16 years. When I first hired in back in 2010, Lifeway was looking for a church practitioner, somebody that was doing good, strong, solid Sunday school work. And so they called one of our state conventions in Texas. We've got 2, and they called the SBTC and asked, hey, who do you know? And lucky for me, or providentially for me, our church and my pastor were very connected to the SBTC. We did work all the time with the state executive director and the discipleship director. So we were well known for trying to do good group work. And they said, hey, you need to talk to Ken. And that started a conversation. I had somebody call randomly one Tuesday afternoon. And 6 months later, I was moving Tammy and I to Nashville for the job. And so for the first 10 years, they had me working as the managing director for adult curriculum. So my job was to come in and evaluate all of Lifeway's basically Sunday school curriculum for adults and make any changes that I felt was needed. And so we spent a decade doing that and reversed a 40-year downward sales trend, made some good changes. And then about 6 years ago, Dr. Mandrell, who was almost brand new to our company, came to me and he said, hey, I've got something I need to ask you to do. I'm going to have my secretary set up a meeting. And so we did. And I told my wife, I said, this is going to go one of 2 ways, meeting with the president. And I said, this is either go really good or really not so good. But it went really good. He said he wanted me to step into the role of director of Sunday school. That's still in my current title. So my title is director of Sunday school and strategic partnerships. And so the strategic partnerships end of it is largely what has me traveling the country almost weekly. It's, Danielle, I'm not a good church member right now because so much of my work happens on the weekends and I'm not around our church a lot. That's going to change down the road, in retirement. But for right now, Southwest Airlines is my best friend kind of a thing, So yeah, I fly a lot. I'm in a lot of places and get to talk with a lot of leaders, both church leaders, state leaders, folks on seminary staffs, things like that. And so I feel like I've got a decent bead, on most churches and what's going on.
Well, I really think Lifeway should change your title to Groups Guru, so I'll put that in for your new president.
Or Groups Grand Poobah. I'll take either one
that's
of
good
those.
too.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
tell us a
Okay.
little bit about you personally. I know your dog is like up there these days, like
Yeah.
ridiculous, Lauren, his dog.
Yeah, she attacked me last night. I was holding her when we had some guests come over to our home, and she just went nuts. I'm holding her right by my face, and so she started clawing, and unfortunately got me pretty deep on my chin. And I told my wife, this one may leave a scar. We'll find out. I may have a really cool Harrison Ford scar. We'll
There you
see.
go.
But
Oh, no.
just I can't get mad at her. She's a 2-year-old Cavapoo, so part King Charles Cavalier, part poodle, all puppy. Just turned 2 years old. We've got two boys. One back in Texas, married, has given us our two grandkids. They're in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then my younger son Ryan actually moved here to Nashville with us back in 2010, his senior year of high school. That was a hard move.
Yeah.
Trying to find, new kids to hang out with, trying to make the football team. Oh yeah, prom's coming. Oh, and I got to figure out what life after high school is. Where am I going to college? So it was a rough, year for him to transition, but he made it, and then ultimately found his wife, and so they've been married a couple of years. We had dinner with them last night, and so yeah, we're a pretty small family. Mother and dad, they've all passed, and my sister and her husband in ministry back in Fort Worth. He pastors, my brother-in-law pastors what I'm going to call a normative sized church. They run about 75 people on any good given Sunday. And that's really, we were talking earlier, gals, that's really the average church in the Southern Baptist Convention, but it's also the average church in America. And
Yeah.
we sometimes forget that we are a convention and a nation of small churches and small congregations.
Thanks for sharing with us a little bit about yourself. And I know Danielle's been hyping you up with me, and she's
Boy,
been telling me every class that she goes to or breakout with you, she is taking notes and learning from you. So I would like to know a little bit about what makes you so passionate about groups, and then
yeah.
training the church and training leaders in the groups.
Lauren, I never felt called to be a senior pastor. I did feel a call to ministry back in the day when Tammy and I were student ministry. We were like 8th grade girls class Sunday school teachers at our church. We'd just gotten married. They asked us to teach. I'd never taught before, said yes, and it was in that year or so of getting launched out into group ministry as a teacher that I thought, this is really something that I enjoy and something I could, see giving my life to, because it wasn't really all about what happened on Sunday mornings, but it was meeting with the girls outside of class. It was meeting their parents. It was getting to know them, hanging around them on Wednesday nights and going to summer camp with them and just making those investments. And it was out of that environment, God used that to call me into ministry. So that was pretty important. And I saw the value of, adults stepping into the world of kids and students and even adults, of course, and making those lasting investments. So that's part of it. But on a more personal note, I'm the product of, I'm just going to call it Sunday school. I know that churches right now call it everything under the life groups, connect groups, community groups, Bible study fellowships. I get it, but I'm going to default to what I grew up under, and that was, the Sunday school ministry. So if that's your church, you've got a group ministry adjacent to your worship service. That's what we're talking about. And I grew up in a home, unfortunately, where my dad did not go to church. He this will sound crazy, but had a call to ministry and went to Southwestern Seminary and was trained to be a pastor, but did not get called to a small church that he thought should have been his church. And before he interviewed at another church as he graduated seminary, he walked away from ministry. So the dad that I grew up knowing was the dad that was mad at God and didn't go to church. And well, that's not true. He would go Christmas and Easter and maybe another one in between, kind of thing. And so, Lauren, to answer your question, why am I passionate about groups? It's because when my father was not the spiritual leader that I had, wanted him to be, and we needed him to be, thank goodness that God had called adults into roles of Sunday school leaders that invested in me and my sister, taught us books of the Bible, taught us, the Bible stories that we weren't being taught at home, and bless my mom's heart. I mean, thank goodness for a godly mother who, prayed with us and took us to church, and made sure that we were there. But it was people, just good Southern Baptist people that invested in my sister and I that I think really changed the course of our lives. And that still is in play, And so I know we probably got a lot of group leaders that may listen to the podcast, but even if they're not, and the folks that are listening are more, church staff leaders, I would say never underestimate the impact that group leaders make on kids, students, and adults, because they changed my life and my sister's lives. And so for that, I'm very grateful. But there's one more reason why I get up and I get excited. Lifeway does a lot of research, and Dr. Rayner, when he was our CEO, liked to do research through his company, Rayner Research. And in one of his books that he published back in the day, he cited something that I think has, at least for me, become one of the most important reasons to do groups, and this is why I can get up in the morning excited about groups. And what he discovered through his research was this. If you had, let's just say, 100 people join your church yesterday, which is not going to happen, right? But statistically, you had 100 people join, they could determine that if a person chose not to get involved in a group, they just said, we can come do church in an hour, come to worship, and then go to lunch, send the kids to kids' church or whatever, just do it in an hour. In 5 years, you can only find 16 of those 100 people still in the church. But if they joined a group, whatever you want to call it, didn't matter. But it's about relationally connecting with other kids and students and adults. In that same 5-year period, 83% could still be found in the church, active and cemented. And that just tells me that although, I love what we do in worship, and it is so important, and you see it in the book of Acts chapter 2 as part of the foundation of the church, going to the temple, hearing the apostles preaching about Jesus every day. The other thing that the first church did was to gather in small groups. And so for me, small groups are literally the glue and the engine of our churches. And woe to the church that believes they can mainly get it done in big church. They'd be shortchanging their people. So Danielle, you know that I used to lead our new member class at our church. And I would tell parents right off the bat in that class, the best thing you can do is you come to church here, keep coming to worship, keep sitting under our pastor's teaching, but let's help you get in a group. Let's get you in a group. And I shared those statistics with them. And hopefully that made a difference for some parents that were on the fence about it. But Lauren, those are some reasons why I can get pretty excited about group ministry.
Well, and that statistic, I believe it was about a year and a half ago that I heard that statistic for the first time, or maybe I'd heard it before, but like really listened and paid attention to it. But it prompted our children's ministry team to go in and pull our whole list, our whole roster of all the kids, and then mark whose parents were in a small group.
Wow.
And then we started new small groups based on grabbing those families of like age is of their kids, and then started new small groups, because it was really disappointing for us and for our ministry team. I think we were at like 35% of our children that attended our service, parents were in a small group. And so it's totally shifted. That statistic shifted how we viewed the families that were walking through our door, and it made a difference.
I'm really proud of you. I'm proud to hear that. That's really good work, good foundational work. Lifeway did a very large, probably the largest post-COVID survey on group ministry in the country. We call it the State of Groups 2024. So now the survey is about a year and a half old, but still, fresh enough. And what we learned there is in the average church, average SBC church, the percentage of people that are in groups that have been in worship the hour before is somewhere just north of 40%. So that means most of our churches have a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of people sitting in our pews that for one reason or another, have just chosen not to go. Maybe they've had a bad experience. Maybe there's not a group that they feel like they can fit into, those kind of things. But there's a lot of potential, I think, for churches to do some real strong connecting of people and helping families, last for the long haul.
Yeah.
Wow, this is already so much. We could stop the podcast right here. And I think whether you are new or you've been in it a while, we got work to do. We've got things to focus
Hmm.
on. And I love that Ken does get the whole ministry. And I love that you talked about the investment, because that's what we call our life group leaders. We call them investors, because I'm like, you're not filling a spot for me. Like, I don't want a volunteer who's just kind of coming and going. Like, you're investing. And for you it's internal investment, eternal. Just and so I love that you said just the investment, and how what a good reminder for all of us to remind our leaders, like, you're not filling a role, you're not a warm body, you are investing and truly changing lives for eternity. And I love that. So I do want to ask you, though, a lot of times we got age group leaders listening, maybe discipleship pastors listening. We in our last whole season was all on family discipleship, and we talked a lot about working together across the board. So I want
Yeah.
to ask you, what are some effective ways age group ministers, so you got adults, but then groups are important in preschool and kids and students and college, young adults. How can these age group ministers create successful groups across the board?
How can they create successful groups across the board? Well, um, man, that there's at least one or two podcast episodes right there.
I
Um,
agree. I agree.
I'm going to say that with adult groups in particular, Danielle, um, one of the things that I think I see happening in adult groups, well, it's not that I think I see it, it is happening, because I know statistically it's happening, because that's part of the State of Groups 2024 survey. We found out that an overwhelming, I'm talking like almost I think it was in the 90 percentile of churches and groups, the groups just don't change that much. Talking about the adult groups, they're very stable. Now, that is not a bad thing necessarily, that there is stability, but it is a bad thing, because what that means is a lot of our adult groups are not sending out people from their groups to go serve. They're not encouraging it. And they're happy to sit there. We also know from that same survey that churches are not limiting the size of groups. So if it can go from 5 to 10 to 10 to 20 to 20 to 30, most churches don't challenge those groups to think about sending out people to go staff other ministries. So if we want successful, groups and group ministries, part of it is that our group leaders, man, they've got to embrace this idea that success does not equal, getting bigger. It means that we almost become like a sending organization. We encourage our folks to leave our group and to go out there and to serve in other groups. And the thing that I keep bumping up against, and it's happened in every church, I've served 4, and it's happened in all 4 churches. I have had people, leaders in particular, ladies, that have said at the time that we're talking about, you can call it splitting groups, you can call it dividing groups. I don't use those terms, but that's what we're talking about. Launching new ones, planting, you can come up with all the positive verbiage you wish, but people still know you're asking us to, say goodbye to some friends and launch a new guy. I don't want to do that. And I have heard things like, don't mess with my group. This is my classroom. These are our chairs. We bought these comfortable chairs. They're ours. And there's just an unhealthy ownership of the group. And so, there's a particular verse that has become my favorite verse. May I have just a moment to share it?
Please share this
Okay.
story.
So here it is. I was reading the book of Amos devotionally. And maybe you've done this, ladies, where you're reading and your job for the day is to read Amos chapters, whatever, 1, 2, 3. And so you're checking the box. You got to read all 3 things, so all 3 chapters, so you can feel good about your devotional plan, right? So I'm reading chapter 3. I get to verse 12, read something, and went about another verse or 2, and then my brain's like, hey, wait a second, what did you just read? And so I backed up to verse 12. Here's what it says. I can do this one from memory. It says in Amos, and by the way, Amos was a shepherd by trade, right? So that's what he did. And I think it's so cool that as the Holy Spirit inspired biblical writers to author their letters to the church, that the Lord used their backgrounds, and you got to see glimpses of that. So here in Amos 3:12, we get to see part of the background of a shepherd. And here's what it says. He is pronouncing judgment. It's an oracle against Israel. And he says in Amos 3:12, as the shepherd snatches 2 legs or a piece of an ear from the lion's mouth, so the Israelites who live in Samaria will be rescued with only the corner of a bed or the cushion of a couch. So there were some Israelites living in Samaria, living it up, yucking it up pretty good. They're comfortable. But judgment's coming. Okay. So that's not the hard part of the verse to understand. It's the first part that perplexed me. As the shepherd snatches 2 legs or a piece of an ear from the lion's mouth. So ladies, my question became, why in the world would a shepherd do this? The lion has killed the sheep. Sheep's dead. So there's really no fight for the life of the sheep. So why would you go harass the number one apex predator of Israel and try to take its lunch away from it? I'm feeling that's pretty dangerous. If it were me, honestly, being the shepherd, I think I'd be going the other direction, Danielle.
Yes.
See you later, Mr. Lion. But evidently, shepherds would go the opposite direction. It's like a firefighter running into the burning building. So they ran towards the danger. And my question still was, why? And after a lot of research and thought and study, I finally figured it out. And here it is. The shepherd would do it not because of his love for the sheep, not because the sheep were helpless, but they were, but he did it because he's not the owner. And he is a temporary steward over somebody else's stuff. And so if he's taken 30 sheep out to pasture and to graze them for the spring, when he's ready to bring them back to his master, he better have 30. But if he's got 29, he's got to be able to reach into his little satchel and pull out what?
The remains, yeah.
The remains, a piece of an ear or the leg bones, and say, look, I didn't take your sheep, sir. I understand. You're the owner. I'm the caretaker. I'm the temporary steward over your stuff, but I understand the order. I get the chain of command, so to speak. And I like to remind group leaders that this is in play as a group leader. If you want successful group ministry in the church, I'm talking now to adult group leaders that may be listening, the one thing we cannot say is that the people that we reached are my people. It's my class. It's absolutely not. It belongs to the Lord first, church second, and then we're 3rd, 4th, or 5th in line. It's not our group. We are just, for the moment, a shepherd, a temporary steward over God's people. And after we're done and gone, then the Lord will raise up somebody that's going to come behind us. And so I find that one of the reasons, that in the church we're having a hard time staffing kid ministries, student ministries, preschool ministries, it's because our adult leaders and our adult groups have forgotten that that's part of the job is to remember that we don't own anything. And Danielle, if you or Lauren, if you guys need help as a group leader, I ought to be the biggest cheerleader for y'all's ministries. Because it's not my people. If I had people leave my group, we ought to have a party and celebrate that, Not that we're happy, that they're leaving the group, but we're happy that they're going to become missionaries to kids or missionaries to the student ministry. And they're going to be an extension of our class and our ministry. And so, what's an effective way for us to have successful groups? Lauren, you asked that question. I've given you a kind of a circuitous answer here. But the answer really is just remember that the ministry itself is going to outlive us. It's not our ministry. It's what the Lord is doing in and through his people. And my job is to send people out and not hoard them. It's not my group in the first place. Does that make sense?
Love that. You could tell me that 100 times and I would love it. And if you're listening, this is a podcast you do pass on, or you bring Ken into your church, because sometimes we can't say those things and we need an outsider. Even Jesus was not respected in his hometown. So bring in a Ken to say some of those hard things. And I think after I sat through this, Ken, I was so convicted because you also talked about how we as age group leaders need to do a better job of caring for our group leaders. And I went back to my roles and made sure that, especially, we have some month on, month off, but we have, the full timers too, that they're all connected to a group? And how else are you seeing, adult groups really like take care of those that are serving? And what can we do in my position
Yeah.
to make sure that our people still feel, they're with kids, which let's be honest, you can learn more teaching a kid's curriculum sometimes than sitting in an
Understand.
adult class.
Yep.
But how do we make sure they still have their place in their group?
This is a good question, good follow-up. I would say this, one of the reasons why, and I think this is an anecdotal assumption on my part, but I think I'm dead on. I don't think I'm off on this one. But a lot of times, when we hear the call, that, hey, we need workers in kids, we need workers in student ministry, we need workers over here. Our adults that are sitting, I'm talking group members that are sitting in their adult groups, they know that if they answer that call, it is the kiss of relational death, because their new best friends will become fourth graders or seventh grade, eighth grade girls or whatever, because here's what happens. They answer the call, they sign up, and they become leaders in other ministries. And what happens in their adult group? We forget about them.
Right.
And they become absolutely invisible. And then they hear that, wait a second, did I miss the Christmas fellowship? Wait a second, the group went to a movie on Saturday night? What? And we just forget to invite them and to make them our heroes that we have sent out from among us. I think if our adult group leaders and group members would make a concerted, hardcore effort to love on those, I'm going to call them missionaries to kids. Why wouldn't I leave to go serve? It's the best of both worlds. I mean, how many more Bible studies as an adult do I need to sit under? For most of us, we're educated beyond our level of obedience anyway. So what do I need next to grow as a disciple? I need to go serve and obey. So I need to leave my class, but I'm afraid to leave my class because I don't want to leave my friends because they'll forget about me. But if there was a way, put their picture on the front of the classroom and we pray for them every single week. We're praying for one or more of the leaders that have left our group to go serve in the preschool kids ministry. We make sure that when our class has a fellowship, they are the first people that we invite, not the last, not an afterthought, not, oh, sorry, and we give them the apology afterwards because we forgot them. I think that's one thing that adult groups can do. But you've asked, so what else can we do for these leaders? We have to remember that most of those adults that are stepping out, they're probably attending a worship service, and then they're serving in a kids ministry, let's just say. So my question becomes, when do they get fed and have adult Bible study /fellowship /relational time? And I have seen a number of churches, and mine in the past I would include, that we started a midweek Bible study on Wednesday nights on the church campus just for leaders out of our kids and student and preschool ministries, because we realized they're completely disconnected from adult Bible study. And so we wanted to give them something during the middle of the week that met every single Wednesday night. So we just asked our adult teachers to do double duty. So what you just taught on Sunday, hey, this week, I need you to teach that on Wednesday night. And we'd have them rotate in and rotate through. But we had this ongoing Bible study /fellowship for the kids workers. And we felt like that was a way to serve them and make it easier for them to say yes, when y'all asked them to come and you tried to recruit them out of our groups.
I love that. I think I'm going to be passing that along for sure at our church to all of our leaders, because I think that is a great way to celebrate and remember and include the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ken, I think you're right. A lot of times when we come and we're asking, for more investors, like Danielle likes to say, the first thing is, am I going to lose my community? And it's hard in children's ministry, student ministry, to help them still stay connected and not feel like they have to give something up in order to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah,
What
it
would
can
you
be the best of both worlds, honestly. If we do it right, we can get the servants that we need, but they can also get the relational feeding and networking that they need, and also the scriptural teaching that they need. It just feels like it's a win-win for everybody.
Yes, I'm going to be stealing, putting up their names on the board in the classes or their pictures up there. I think that's great. Pray over them because they're going to
Yeah,
need it, especially if they're in there with those middle school kiddos.
they do.
That's a rough age right there.
I'm going to tell you one more thing, though, since we're
Yeah.
doing this. Now, what I have to say is do as I say, not as I do, because Danielle, I've never been able to pull this off, but I think it's a phenomenally good idea. And I have those every once in a great while. But I think that it could be fun, and you'll have to contextualize this for, your church, those of you that are listening today. But I think it would be wonderful if an adult group would say to someone like a Danielle, "Hey, Danielle, we want to adopt one or two of your groups." What does that mean? It means that we want to come and at least maybe once a month or maybe once every 6 weeks, we want to send a couple into that group to teach. And we want the teacher that's normally in there with, say, 4-year-olds or whatever. We want to invite them to come to our adult group that week. And we want to invite them to come, pray over them in person, not, do it for the whole class time, but just to call attention to, this is one of the teachers that we're loving on this year. It could be even better if that teacher had been one that they had launched, and they're coming back to the group, reconnecting, on a regular basis. And what does that also do? It sends people from the group into those scary classes that they're afraid to go to. And they realize, what, these kids are actually fun.
Right.
I could see myself doing this. Hey, the next time there's a call for workers, I think we're going to raise our hand because this is not as scary as I thought it used to be. And I think that'd be great for adult groups to think about adopting groups within the other ministries and serving those teachers that way by having some adult fellowship time with them and featuring them and making them feel special and valued for what they're doing.
I love that. And of course, you take it to 2.0, and I'm like, oh, I got to go. I have only one class doing that now, but they don't do it for that. They're my cover class, because
Okay.
we, with the 400 texts we get on Saturday night.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
I do have,
Mm-hmm.
I do have a women's class that has a great group of already screened child protected teachers and I've actually got teachers from there since that I know I can text and go, I need a sub tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got that far, but I love you taking it the next mile and really do it to minister, not just cover our child protection needs. But we have gotten people teaching out of that. They're like, I can do this. I sub there. I can do
Mm-hmm.
this. So I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
I love that on this podcast, we get to hear practical ideas that either a new person can implement, or Danielle and I have been doing this, 20 years plus, are like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. I think we're always learning and we're always growing. And that's what I love about Sunday's Got Us Talking. Ken, what would you say the biggest misconception would be when it comes to groups, like within ministry leaders?
Yeah. This is a fairly easy one,
Okay.
Lauren. Here it is. Bigger is better. For some reason, we equate size with success. And that is just not true. Some of the healthiest, some of the greatest groups that I've ever seen have been that small to medium sized group. They really have. The big groups are fun. They're fun to teach, but they're also places where a lot of adults in particular can hide out, So bigger is not better. And I think that goes to one of the issues that the Southern Baptist Convention has right now. And that is that we have a big problem in group ministry in that, Danielle, you just mentioned it earlier. We've got a system in place for subs. Most of us do. Most of the adult groups that I know, they've got kind of that go-to person. Teacher's sick or on vacation, you call them. You've got a group of ladies, they're willing to, step in and sub. What we do not have in our groups are apprentices. And those are people that are intentionally being prepared to either take over the group or to leave the group within a year or so and go start a group. And I wish that we could change that mindset and mentality, that my goal is not to see if I can, how big I can get my group, but it's how many people can I train up and then send out. And when you do that, then size does not matter. Some of the most healthy groups can be 10, 12, 13 people, but they're sending out couples every year and facilitating other groups. And so that's one of the big, one of the big misconceptions, Lauren, is that the bigger my group is, the healthier it is. I don't know, because most things that get real big aren't real healthy, So they just don't. I think another misconception is this, that I have to be this A level, A plus, I got to be able to really command the scripture, and have a great biblical understanding. And until I get to that magical point, I can't teach. And I think that what I have seen, and I know what the research bears out, is that that people that have more of a shepherd heart, I'm going to call them a shepherd teacher, a shepherd teacher. A lot of times those folks actually have the best, healthiest groups. They might be more of a B-level teacher. They're not going to be as eloquent or as communicative and creative as maybe the A-level person. But here's the deal. I can't take an A-level teacher that likes the sound of their voice and teach them how to love people better. But I can take a B-level teacher that loves people, and I can teach them how to be a better teacher. And then I've got a shepherd teacher who is now an A-level teacher. And so I think one of the misconceptions is, I've got to be able to do kind of like what my pastor does. No, you don't. Some of the best group leaders I know are, I'd call them B-level or even C-level teachers, but they love their people. And the people know that, and the people hang in there with them. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and you're a curriculum guy. And so, I think with our curriculum these days, people can, my favorite person that I use to recruit is a teacher that says, I'll never leave teaching second grade because I've learned more with this chronological curriculum
There
than I
you go.
ever did sitting in an adult class. So I think we have the curriculum today that we can say, if you love Jesus and you want to shepherd, we're going to put something in your hand that's going to
Yeah.
help you.
Yeah. Here's one more misconception, gals. And this is prevalent, and it's more prevalent in adult groups in particular. But there is a misconception that my job is to basically deliver a second sermon. They're trying to model themselves in their teaching after the pastor. And in a group setting, that's probably the exact wrong philosophy to have in a group. And so in nature, this is called pre-mastication. And it's the process where a number of animals, and this is gross, but there are actually some human cultures where the parents chew up the food and regurgitate it to the children.
Yes.
And unfortunately, every Sunday morning across our convention, well-intentioned and well-meaning group leaders open their leader materials and start reading from the materials, or they start talking and they'll talk for 45 minutes. Nobody gets a word in edgewise, and essentially deliver a second sermon. So there's a misconception that that's how to teach. Now, I get it. We're trying to pattern ourselves after the church's best teacher, which is typically our pastor. And by necessity, he has to do that. It's a monologue in the worship center. But I think in our groups, it's got to be dialogue, or even better, Dr. Stetzer used to call it a groupalogue, where everybody is participating. Everybody's got an opportunity to speak and contribute and those kinds of things. So we do that really well in kids ministry, because if you didn't, you would have a mutiny on your hands pretty quick, right? So y'all have got it figured out. I don't know what happens, but when we get to the adult stage of life, we forget that, hey, we used to be kids that have needs to learn in a variety of ways. And sometimes just a second sermon is not the way to get us to come to Sunday school and bring our families. We get bored with that. And so it's easy to say, you know what? Now let's skip because the weather's good. Let's go to the park. Let's go to the beach. Let's go see grandma. So I'd say let's don't give our folks reasons to do that.
Question, but it wasn't one that I was planning on asking.
No, go ahead.
But
Hey,
as we're talking,
let's work without a net.
as we're talking about misconceptions,
Mhm.
one of the things when we've been trying to help our parents go and find a Sunday school or small group,
Mhm.
whatever, churches are calling it at their church, when we're trying to help them do that, they'll visit one or two and then they'll come back and those just weren't for us or we didn't fit in. How do you help leaders, or what have you found is the best way to get adults to join into small groups?
Yeah. So, okay, couple of responses there, Lauren. Number one, there is extreme power in the power of the personal invitation. So we can give a potential group member couple, we can give them a brochure, we can point them, we can take them to the class and say, look, here's a class we think will fit you. But the really powerful thing happens when a member of the group and or the teacher in the group invites that person and they've got that personal invitation. How do I know that? Because it was 2020 or 21, we released a book about mid-pandemic called Together, The Power of Groups. And it concerned itself with two things, ladies. Why do people join groups? Why do people leave groups? And we discovered that the number one reason why they join a group is because either the teacher or the group member invited them. And so if our people would become inviters, that would solve much of our dilemma about getting people out of the rows in the worship center and into the circles of a group. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It won't happen, until the church members themselves take that responsibility on. And I look for people every single Sunday around me. I'm looking several pews up and back and up and down mine. Because if I see somebody that I don't recognize in my zone, then I go up to them and I talk, hey, is this your first Sunday? I'm Ken, fairly new to the church here. How about you? And hey, do you have a group yet? And I know that if I can start a conversation and invite them, I've got a pretty good chance. In fact, 47% of anybody who goes to a group goes because of the invitation. Everything else that you could add up to the 100 mark are like 3, 4, 5, 6%. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's on the website, a brochure, it all pales in comparison to one human being stopping long enough, pausing long enough to engage with somebody and say, look, I care enough about you. I would love to have you in my group. Let's go. Can you come? Walk with me. I'll introduce you to people. So that is absolutely huge, to help there. But I'd also say this. A lot of times we're so well-intentioned. Let's get you guys plugged into a group. Your kids are in Sunday school. Let us walk you to a young adult class, and off we go. And we, shove them in the door, and we're hoping the best. But here's what happens, ladies, and this is epidemic. Most of the groups in our churches have been together for a pretty long time. The longer they're together, the harder it is for new people to plug in. I've experienced this. At the 2-year mark, now think about this, and if you're an adult leader listening to this, this is going to be hopefully convicting, but after your group has been launched, let's say it's now 24 months later, so you're 2 years into it, most of our groups are well beyond that. But at the 2-year mark, there are two things that tend to happen to almost every group. Here it is. Number one, they have reached their maximum size. They'll fluctuate a little bit, but it's not like, hey, if we're reaching 12 people, all of a sudden we're going to grow to 30. That's not going to happen in most groups. You may be 12 or 13 or 14. You'll drop back to 10, 11. You're just going to kind of balance out around. So whatever you are at 2 years, it's probably what you are today. Number two, and this is the bad one, is that at the 2-year mark, groups almost 100% of the time turn inward. Because the people have been together, prayed together, they've served together, they've had fun together, they've studied the Bible together. They have done, ladies, exactly what we said to do. But what happens is that relational web, closes in, and I use this phrase in training, Danielle, people get Legoed up. They get connected relationally. So then we send the new couple in, hoping that they're going to make some connections and fit. And what happens is they come into a group, they see people having fun, laughing, yucking up. You can tell that there's history, that their people have relationships, but what they don't have are those open connectors like on a block of Legos. They just don't have any other relational space to add that new couple or new couples that are coming into the group. So what happens, Lauren? They come back to you guys and you go, well, how'd you like that? And they go, it just wasn't for us. What are they saying? I looked around and I saw quickly, there's no way to make friends in here. So they're not going to go just to go to Bible study. Most folks go for the relational connections, and they get Bible study as a bonus, to be honest.
That's a good question, Lauren.
Danielle, you're right. Like, I am like mentally taking notes here. Like, I'm like, okay, now I can take these names of some couples and I can give it to that hospitality person that's really good in adult groups that
Yeah.
can contact them instead of me being the one, bringing them. And then also, I'm going to go back and ask all my adult small groups to set goals of how many new members they want to add to their
Yeah.
group this year. I mean,
Yeah.
the wheels are
Absolutely.
turning. I'm in
I,
children's ministry, but the
well,
wheels are turning in in
Well, we're all
recruitment.
one team. It's one
Right.
team,
That's exactly right. Here's another good thing to do. I would absolutely do this. I would tell your greeter team, your greeter ministry folks that are directing people to groups. This is going to sound, what I'm fixing to say, somebody out there listening to this is going to go, wow, he's mean. But I'm just trying to be strategic. I'm going to assume that the greeter station has got a list of classes that they can send people to. If it were me, I would take my little pen if I was a church staff person, and I'd go X out some of those groups. And I would ask my greeter people to send the potential new group members to our newest classes, because it's in those groups that people are not already all Legoed up. And statistically, they've got more chances of sticking in that kind of a newer group. If you send them to a group that's been together for 10, 12 years, good luck. Because I've sat in those and people don't talk to you. I mean, you watch them talk with each other and they're a friendly group to each other, but a lot of times we're not included. My wife and I've lived that. And so, send your guests to your newest groups. And I think you'll find that it'll be more sticky.
Love that. All right, I'm going to throw another one at you that
Okay.
we didn't tell you about because
Sure.
you're rolling with it. So, and I'm going to kind of pull it in with one of our last questions. But first, I want you to tell, because I think this is so important, because you talked about teaching style. Will you tell a little bit about the story of when you used music in your adult class and
Oh, yeah.
it was the best? Tell that story, and then I'll ask you another one.
It was one of my favorite things that ever happened. It was the first group that Tammy and I started after we got here to Tennessee. It started out with almost nobody. It was a paper class, which meant the church gave us a list of about 60 people that were AWOL. And they said, if you can get them to come there, that's a group. And so we started calling and prospecting and, texting and all this, emailing. And we launched with me, Tammy, and a guy named Leon. It was three of us that first Sunday. It was pathetic. Wasn't sure it was going to make. We kept at it. And finally, we got up to some critical mass and began running about 16 people on any given Sunday, right? I realized that I have a particular bent when I teach. And there are 8 different learning approaches. And I am a visual logical is what I am. So I like PowerPoints and charts and maps, and I like things in front of you to fill out and, those kind of things. That's just how I tend to teach. And I realized one week as I was getting ready to prepare, I have never done anything for musical learners, people that learn through lyrics and song, and God has wired a lot of people that way. He just didn't happen to wire me that way. So it's not my favorite way to learn. So it's not my favorite way to teach. But that week, I decided I was going to force myself to appeal to whoever in the group was my musical learner. So I was teaching a lesson on Ephesians 5. So that is the wives submit to your husbands passage. Husbands, love your wives. Children, obey your parents. It's all about the home, right? It's exactly order in the home, relationships in the home. And so, I decided to ask a really, really strong icebreaker that was recommended in my Lifeway curriculum. And it was simply this: what is your favorite memory of home? That's how I, opened the class. But as they were coming into the class, before they knew we were going to be studying Ephesians 5, I had John Denver playing in the background. And it was Country Roads, Take Me Home. And it was just playing in the background. And then all of a sudden, 5-10 minutes into the fellowship time, people realized there's John Denver playing. And so they started like swaying, back and forth. And then they started singing. And we were all singing Country Roads, Take Me Home with John Denver. People were smiling. They were laughing. And then after that was over, I asked that question, what's your favorite memory of home? So I used his song about home to jump into a Bible study about home. So you're still with me on this, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
it's
at,
a good
at,
bridge. You're building a
so,
bridge. Yeah.
so at the end of class, I'm cleaning the marker board. People are yucking it up. They're fixing to go upstairs and go to worship. And the two last ladies to leave the class are leaving. One lady named Jackie is walking out the door talking to her other friend, and Jackie says, loud enough for me to hear, this was the best Bible study our group's ever done. And off they went. Well, I looked at my wife, who's cleaning up the room, and I'm wiping down the marker board. And I'm like, hey, that probably wasn't the very best lesson we've ever done in here. And, but I realized this, Jackie was the only member of our little group that was also a member of the choir. And music is how God had wired her. And for probably 2 years that I taught the group, I had never appealed to the primary way that she likes to learn. So it taught me a huge lesson. As much as I, am not drawn to musical activity, there are people in my group that are, and that goes for the other 7 learning approaches. And so, Danielle, that's why when I teach, I try to teach with a level of variety. I don't do all 8 in one Sunday, but I try to use 2 or 3. And over time, I hit all 8, and then we just go over and over and over again. And so if anybody were to say, hey, Ken's a really good teacher, all they're saying is he tends to teach in the way I like to learn. And so that's what I say to group leaders is, make sure you get out of your comfort zone, teach in some new and unique ways that maybe you don't like, but they'll be very meaningful to your people.
Love that, because in preschooling kids, and if you're a preschool kids leader in here, you need to make sure your teachers get those learning styles. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we're not doing that in preschool and kids, we're going to be duct taped to the wall. I mean, it's like a necessity, or we're losing it.
Yeah, for
But I
y'all,
do
it's like
feel
self-defense.
right, totally. But if you're a new ministry leader here, get those to your teachers. I have in training, I have them evaluate in the last month, check off which ways have you taught, because you taught with what you like to learn. But I feel like we lose that as we get into students and then up into adults. And I know that's how I want to learn. But for some reasons with adults, we're like, no, we're going to go to lecture when she needed music. Okay,
Absolutely.
Lauren had another good question about smaller churches that I think she was going to
Okay.
throw at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap it up, we do hear a lot of our listeners say, okay, we're in a smaller church in children's ministry or in student ministry. We only have like 10 kids that come on a Sunday morning and they're all age ranges. How do we help those smaller churches be successful in groups?
Well, this will sound self-serving. But one of our curriculum lines, which is Bible Studies for Life, is we call it one of the big 3. So it's Bible Studies for Life is 1, Explore the Bibles 2, and then Gospel Project is 3. But Bible Studies for Life is the one line that we have that has options for churches that have groups where you've got so many different kids, but not enough to have 4 or 5 groups. Essentially, you have got 1 or 2 groups, so the curriculum is designed knowing that you're going to have older and younger kids in the room. So I would say if that is a need in your church, a smaller church, I think that's a really good line of curriculum to consider for that particular reason. But a lot of times what we would want to do is and this is not to cut out or to hurt their learning, but some of those older kids, now think about this. Those older children can actually help in some facet of leadership of the group. Now, I'm not talking, hey, let's give them a leader guide and, knife them and they become, junior teachers. But there are things that they can do to help with the youngers. If that's setting out things before class, they could have special jobs. And can you imagine if we did that in some of our more normative sized churches and use some of those children and some of those, if they're believers, they're spiritually gifted, they don't get that when they're adults. And a lot of our kids come to Christ early, so they're spiritually gifted. Why not help them explore what their gifting is and help them use that way before they become adults, so that by the time they get to the student ministry, serving and helping feels like a very natural thing and not just come and sit and be served or be taught. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I love
Yeah.
it. Like what I'm hearing
Yeah.
you say is, we have that wide range of kids in our groups within our children's student ministry, and we want to pick the right curriculum that will be able to lead all ages, but also as a leader, we want to teach them for all the learning styles that'll be in the room, make it fun and engaging, have our older kids serving and an ownership of the class and in some leadership, but also even just making it fun and the vision being set throughout the church as a whole so we can get those leaders into our small classes. So we might think, oh, it could just fall on me. I'm the leader of the small group in a small church, so I'm going to do it all. But we can still get the leaders of the church to come and invest when they see the vision that we have, even within smaller
Yeah.
churches.
And Lauren, I would also say, like, let's just say that a church has got a small-ish kids ministry. If the kids, let's just say it's all in one group at this point, but if the group could be divided into like first, second, and third, and then fourth, fifth, sixth, or first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and you could start another group, or perhaps two. You might be surprised. Our churches might be surprised that when we start to segment like that, families and kids they seem to come out of the woodwork for some reason.
Yes.
And those groups that just got started, all of a sudden, hey, we had 2 kids last week, we got 4 this week, and where'd they come from, and it's interesting how that works, right? So sometimes just saying, you know what, we don't have enough to have a group for first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, but let's go from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 3, and just stair step it.
Yes, I love it. All of these resources that Ken's been talking about, his books that he has, and he has a website, kenbraddy.com. All of this will be posted in our show notes. You can find more information about our podcast on sundaysgoddesstalking.com. Ken, I cannot thank you enough. I have learned so much from you. I'm excited to go. Normally when I learn a lot, the next week when I go back to work, everybody's like, oh, Lauren, because I come back with a whole list of ideas. So, they may not be too appreciative of you next week, Ken.
Well, that's okay. See, that's the great part of doing this right here. I can get you all worked up, and then you got to go deal with that.
I love it.
Yeah. But thank you for having me on. This has been fun, and many blessings for success for your podcast. Love what you're doing. We need more of these things right here to encourage our workers and to encourage our pastors. And so keep up the good work, ladies.
Thank you. And if you're listening today, you may want to say, I need more of Ken. He has his own podcast. So check that out. And again, those are great resources to kind of share up, to lead up and say, hey, this is more kind of what he's talking about. Help me out. So Ken, we like to close each podcast with prayer. So we're just going to pray for group leaders in our churches right now. And then we'll end this amazing episode 7. Let's pray.
Sounds good.
Father, I am so thankful that you knew we needed help and a guide, and you sent Jesus not only to help and guide, but first and foremost to save us from our sins. But God, I thank you for how he modeled shepherding, caring. He could have taught so many lessons about service with a crossword puzzle or a lecture, but he got on his knees and he washed feet and he healed and he went to hard places. He had hard conversations and he loved and he checked on people. So God, we thank you for the perfect example, and we confess before you right now, we are not that. But we thank you that those of us in you, in Jesus, have the Holy Spirit. And God, that empowers us. So God, we just pray that you continue to use Ken mightily as he goes into train. God, I thank you that he says things that kind of shake up how we've always done things. Because God, that's not relying on you. That's relying on tradition. And God, we want to just follow your example. And God, as we've said before, you have placed us in our roles, whether we are volunteers or staff. You placed us there. You placed our church where it is. God, you have a plan. So God, would you show us and lead us where we are to do your will there, not for a name for our church or ourselves, but for your glory, and to bring more people into saving faith with you. And then, God, I'm so thankful for the community that the church is. And God, we want to model that for the world. And we got to start with each other and know how to love each other so then we can love a broken world. It is in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
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 Thanks for joining the conversation today. Be sure to join the community at sundaysgoddesstalking.com and on your favorite social media platform.